And at that point, the union, as well as the school administration and committee, realized that that was a flawed metric, in that there were, at the time, according to Mrs. Hoffman and the health department, I believe 8 cases in the entire school community of over 4,500 individuals. So if you took that number for that reason alone, you would probably have not gone back. But because we had a metric, we were forced to follow the metric as we agreed upon, and we did so. I think everyone agreed, especially the union administration, that we had to take a look at that. And if we can correct that so that doesn't happen again, we should do so. So as I said, the union asked to meet immediately, which we did that Friday morning, and came up with some new language, which I would suggest 90% of it was generated by the union. And the union had a vote on this addendum. And I received this information from Sean Rude, the president of the Agawam Education Association. The Agawam Education Association's general membership voted as follows in support of Addendum B as presented. 266 educators voted yes, 90 educators voted no, 6 educators abstained from voting. So they had at least a 2/3 vote. Within our own leadership group, the Agawam Education Association's executive board, we supported the addendum 34 and 4 against. 30 were in favor of it and 4 were against it. He asked that I make sure that the committee understood what that vote was and how the vast majority of people were in fact in favor of this new addendum B. At this point, what I want to do is turn it over to Mrs. Hoffman to go through this addendum B. And at that point, we will ask for a motion to approve in a second so that we can open it up for discussion. Mrs. Hoffman.
So number 1 in the addendum B is that the district and the union will negotiate all changes from one model to another. The staff will be given at least 48 hours notice of any transition back to in-person learning. And same goes for the other direction. Staff will be given at least 48 hours notice of any transition to remote learning when feasible. And of course, if there's an emergency situation, 48 hours might not be feasible, but if we can do it safely, then it will be given. At any time, the superintendent, in consultation with the district's local board of health and the union president, may postpone school and pivot models after taking into consideration the following factors based on the most recent and appropriate data. For this section, all factors hold equal and may be used in unison or separate to warrant a pivot. If a pivot is made, a joint statement by the district and the association will be released to the Agawam community explaining the rationale behind the change. This statement will be provided for the Agawam School Committee prior to public consumption. A, if the average positivity rate, which is reported at weekly COVID-19 public health report, passes the threshold of 5% in the town of Agawam. B, if the positivity rate in the school community warrants a model change. C, if the number of positive cases within the school community is at 30 or more cases and mitigating strategies such as closing a building, a cohort, or a classroom have not contained the spread. D, a rating of red under the state's new community COVID-19 ranking model for Agawam, minus long-term care facility numbers and duplicate reporting for 3 consecutive weeks. E, if there are delays in testing results. At any time within a 48-hour notice, at any time without a 48-hour notice, if we run out of agreed upon PPE, or if the state mandates a pivot to a remote model. Some additional factors that we have added and agreed upon to propose to you is the district website will keep a running count of positive COVID cases in the school system, updated daily, visible to all. A shared document will be created between the union president and the superintendent for the sole purpose of documenting positive COVID cases within the school community. C, a bi-weekly meeting will occur with the town's health agent, the mayor or designee, the superintendent, the union president, and the executive director to discuss COVID-related information as it pertains to the Agawam school community. And D, the superintendent, in collaboration with the union president, will update the school committee and the school community bi-weekly on a current state of positive cases in the Agawam school community in an effort to keep all parties informed, safe, and part of this ongoing conversation.
Sheila, can I interrupt you? I just got a text that people cannot hear us in our platforms.
At all?
No, I got numerous texts that people cannot hear us. Sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
I have the same text, so it's not just Dawn's friends.
Okay, thank you.
5 minutes weren't loud enough.
Did they hear?
Would you check with them now because it was a volume issue, I was told.
Okay, I will check. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry, thank you.
So Sheila, when you're talking, you cut out every once in a while. Is that my problem here, or is everybody hearing that? Must be me, right?
I heard Sheila fine.
I was fine, so I think it's you.
Sounds like
Fine on my end.
Okay,
Fine here.
must be me.
See if you can get a heads up again.
Would you like me to review anything?
Sorry, Sheila, I'm still hearing that channel 15 has no volume.
Well, that's a less issue then.
So,
Les is on with us. I'm hoping he hears that.
Less is saying. No, I don't think so.
All right, on my end, some people can, some people can't, so it might be the less issue.
Okay. I'm just checking with Les Tingley. Who's doing?
I just heard an all good for channel 15.
Okay, thank you very much.
So
I
we
think-
might have to do that again, Sheila, because that's what you went over is important.
Yes, I think it is. So I think I will ask Mrs. Hoffman, once again, would you please review addendum B for us, which is what we're going to be voting on today.
So the district
Thank you.
will negotiate all changes from one model to another. Staff will be given at least 48 hours notice of any transition back to in-person learning. And staff will be given at least 48 hours notice of any transition to remote learning when feasible. And of course, that would also give notice to our families a little more time. At any time, the superintendent, in consultation with the district's local board of health and the union president, may postpone school and pivot models after taking into consideration the following factors, based on the most recent and appropriate data. For this section, all factors hold equal merit and may be used in unison or separate to warrant a pivot. If a pivot is made, a joint statement by the district and the association will be released to the Agawam community explaining the rationale behind the change. This statement will be provided for the Agawam School Committee prior to public consumption. A, if the average positivity rate, which is reported at the weekly COVID-19 public health report, passes the threshold of 5% in the town of Agawam. If the positivity rate in the school community warrants a model change. If the number of positive cases within the school community is at 30 or more cases and mitigating strategies such as closing a building, a cohort, or a classroom have not contained the spread. A rating of red under the state's new community COVID-19 ranking model for Agawam, minus long-term care facility numbers and duplicating reporting for 3 consecutive weeks. If there are any delays in testing results, and at any time without a 48-hour notice, if we run out of PPE, if the state mandates a pivot to another model, to the remote model. The district agrees to clearly articulate health protocols, and there are 4 additional pieces of information that are in this addendum. The district website will keep a running count of positive COVID cases in the school system, updated daily, viewable to all. A shared document will be created between the union president and the superintendent for the sole purpose of documenting positive COVID cases within the school community. A bi-weekly meeting will occur with the town's health agent, the mayor designee, the superintendent, the union president, and the executive director to discuss COVID-related information as it pertains to the Agawam school community. And the superintendent, in collaboration with the union president, will update the school committee, and the school community bi-weekly on the current state of positive cases in the Agawam school community in an effort to keep all parties informed, safe, and part of this ongoing conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to once again, before we open this up for a motion in a second so that we can discuss it, I just want to once again reiterate how proactive the teachers union was to get this done. They were eager to get some of these things addressed that they felt were a problem. One of the most important ones was the 48-hour notice. They realized how that is very important to anyone, whether it's the staff or the parents, to have that. So I can't thank them enough for all the work that they put into it to make this a possibility. So with that, is there a motion to accept this addendum B?
So moved. All right.
Motion made by Mr. Minio,
Second, Dawn.
seconded by Ms. Doobie. Questions or discussion? If you could raise your hand, those that are online, I can see you. Mr. Minio.
So and thank you guys for all your hard work over the last week, putting this together, obviously in the best interest of the students, the parents, the staff, everybody involved in the process. My question, Sheila, is, item B, or it says 3 consecutive weeks in the red. I would assume we're probably, I didn't see if the report came out today, but I would assume we're probably going to be in the red this week. So does that mean, and I just want for clarification, because I think I do know the answer, but next week, if it was to, and we were in fact to be red again, would that warrant a pivot to remote automatically, or would that just mean that you guys would review it based on that particular item?
We would review the situation and circumstances and how those cases presented in our school community if we were 3 weeks consecutive red.
Okay, so it's not an automatic pivot, it just warrants a discussion.
Correct, and any of these can be factored together or separately.
Okay, so I'm just going to say that I do in fact agree with this. I think the cases in the schools are relatively low. I have full faith in Sheila and our health Kathy, health administrator Kathy, to make their correct call. As you see, when you close the ECC, you're not afraid to do it if you feel like you have to. So thank you for all the hard work that went into this. And hopefully we start trending in the right direction. But that's all I really need to say as of right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minio. Others? Mr. Bonavita, did you have something? I know I can't see you. You're on the phone.
Yes.
Go ahead.
When you were going through it, I just want to make sure I have it clear. When you were going through it, I thought you said it was 2 weeks in red, but it's 3, right?
That's correct. Our original MOU had 2 weeks, and so this addendum changes that 2 consecutive weeks to 3 consecutive weeks, and that was kind of based on the latest guidance we've gotten from at the state level.
Okay, so that came from the state.
That was
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, that was a recommendation, and as we kind of learn more about what these metrics mean, 2 weeks really is counting 1 week twice, always, because it's over a 2-week span. So we felt as though 2 weeks wasn't really indicative of what COVID looked like in our school community.
Okay. Now the 5%, you guys did the negotiation. We weren't. I wasn't there. How did we arrive at that 5% figure? I know some communities have 3. I don't think anybody has over 5 that I've heard of. Maybe there are, but I haven't heard of them. How was that arrived at? Is it just based on looking at the number of cases of positivity, how many that means, how many people were tested, how was it determined?
So I believe it started from the 3% in our original MOU. Again, being
Right.
over 3% this last week, we said, do we feel as though we would have to close schools if we had the discussion and conversation? And so again, it's really dependent on circumstances and where these cases are, and just all kinds of different situational information. And we felt as though 3, although at the time of the original MOU we thought was a good value, we're thinking it's not really a good indicator to shut schools totally, all of them, at this point now. So I believe, and I could be wrong, and maybe Russ can help me here, but I believe 5% is kind of like the state metric that they've been using to kind of pull back on things.
There's actually been kind of a variety of positivity rates and what people feel is acceptable, but every MOA I've seen has been in the 3 to 5% range. So I think if you look at like CDC and the state, there's a variety of recommendations, but they seem to fall in that range. And I think that's where it's come from.
Thanks.
Okay.
It's also the trend though. So if you're at 3% and you're trending down versus, 3% and you were at 0% before, or, 0.5%. So they look at the trend. So that's why it's not a definitive, but that's kind of mark to look at. If you're at 5%, you should be looking more carefully.
And again, to understand this, Mr. Russell, I think the most important part of it is where it says that the way that for the section, all factors hold equal merit. It may be used in unison or separate to warrant a pivot. That I think is a good idea, because you may not have 5, but you may have other things that warrant a model change, depending on if there's clusters or whatever. And I think that's what that means. I know that's what it means. So you can look at all these factors, and they don't have to hit every one. They can be used in unison, or they can be used individually. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good. I think that's a good way to handle it. What I would say about I'm going to support this, but I would say that the process at the beginning, I thought was a little bit confusing. Where, I had heard when the initial agreement was reached, not this one, but the previous one, I heard that the union's executive board voted it down, but that the membership never voted on it. So to be honest with you,
I think you're correct, Mr. Bonavita, and I think what happened was they don't have to, according to the union, because the day we sat with them, they actually said that didn't have to take place, but what they wanted to be sure of this time is that not only did the executive board vote, they did, as you saw from my numbers I gave earlier, they put back the whole body, which is the right thing to do, and they realized that, and they did the right thing.
Yeah, that my concern, I will be honest with you, I would have voted no if it didn't go to all the teachers for a vote. I think this is a really important issue, and I think every teacher had a right to voice their opinion. Now, what the union rules are, that's a whole nother story. That's not up to me, but I'm just telling you how I feel. And so I was happy. Yeah, that's happy to get here.
Yeah, I think it's important that the vote was 266 to 90.
Right.
So the mechanics of it is, like you just said, isn't kind of under our purview, but I'd like to try to stay focused on this particular addendum if we could.
Yeah. So overall, now this second time that we're going through it, well, I wasn't entirely pleased with the process. I think that what you arrived at was good, and overall, the way it's drafted, and that it has a lot of different provisions in it that protect this is the way I read it, that they protect both the student body. Obviously, parents have concerns. It meets their concerns. And at the same time, it protects the teachers. The teachers have a say in it. They actually, by having this documentation, the way it's drafted, and I like the way it's drafted about unison or separate. If that wasn't in there, I would have had a problem if it had to be every factor. So I like that drafting. Whoever did that, they did a good job. And so I am going to support this. But I think it's in the best interest of both the students and the teachers. Everybody always can have differences. There's 7 of us on the committee, the superintendent, the mayor's on the committee, but anybody could read through documentation like this and pick things out that they're not 100% with, and I understand that. And I'm looking at the document as a totality, not, I could pick on certain things and harp on them, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I think it's best to look at it in its totality. And again, the way it's drafted, any one of these factors could kick in and cause a change and a pivot. So I think that was well done. And so I am going to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Wendy? Mrs. Rua?
Just unmuting. Thank you. I do have a couple of questions because we weren't part of the negotiation process. So I just want to understand things. I don't feel like I can vote unless I really understand. Well, I'm not a medical professional. We've been over this since this started. So can you please, Mrs. Hoffman, share the statement or position of the medical professional on the numbers that are presented? Because I do believe that person was at the meeting, but can you share out with us, please, who was consulted and a statement on that person's consensus of the numbers you presented?
Yes, these metrics were shared with Happy Hour, our health director, and our school nurse. And Mrs. Hour responded to, I don't have her statement, but I can tell you in summary what she said, and what she has said and continues to say is many of these decisions and conversations need to look at the circumstances of the number of cases, where they are there patterns that we're seeing, are there clusters that we're seeing. Through the health department, they go back and do their contact tracing as we help in the school district, and they start to put together patterns or people who may have been at the same place outside of school, if they have maybe in the same place inside of school, if we're seeing any kind of trends. And so she says, again, each one of these factors could happen, and then we have to look deeper into what the details tell us and what the circumstance and situation tells us.
Okay. So did the numbers 5% or 30 students, were those recommendations right from our medical professional, or where did those numbers come from?
The teachers presented some of these and in discussion with us. And I think the number 30 that you see there is like, if we have a lot of cases and we've tried to slow the numbers down and it's not happening, then we really should look at that a little more carefully. So what haven't we done? What's not working? So that's kind of where that 30 came in. And again, as Attorney Dupre said, 3 to 5 is kind of the range of positivity rates. And kind of part of our discussion is in a town like Agawam, we don't have a college or a prep school or an organization that does the regular testing of their students or people or members. And so we might not necessarily get, people who are getting tested out of precautionary measures or because they're mandated by their school. And so what that tells us is that many people getting tested may be getting tested because they do have symptoms, or they have been identified as a close contact, or they've heard of some kind of exposure that is close to them. And so, again, that's why when we looked at the positivity rule, and we said, well, if we had a college that was testing having all these tests regularly, our percentage might be lower. So we just kind of took a lot of different things into consideration.
Okay. Can you help me with the 48-hour pivot? Why 48 hours? As I read that, it just seems if our numbers were close to 30 or 5%, that a faster pivot like 24 hours might be more prudent. So I'm just wondering how we landed on 48 instead of 24, for example.
So the 48 is to go from remote only back in. So to give people at least a 40, because that's something we can control. The 48 hours of notice to any transition to remote when feasible. And I think that's the really important phrase there. I think this last Thursday came to a shock to people, and they didn't have a lot of time to plan. And again, as I said, I feel as though we had the MOU that said we pivot and didn't say anything about 24 hours or 48 hours. We just weren't specific. And so now looking back, we said, hey, if we can give people time to transition, we should if it's safe.
So I like the if it's safe. That's why I appreciate this kind of dialogue. If you see 30 cases coming in a cluster, you're not going to say we have to wait 48 hours. You're going to do right. Okay. We weren't at that table, so going through these details is important. Yeah. I did not see what happens to both students or teachers for sports or clubs that are going on. Are those automatic pivots as well during times, or do they stay the course? Are they completely different? If we shut down because of these super high numbers, what do we do with that?
So
do
right now,
staff still have to report to coach or whatever?
Yeah, so right now for sports, we're using the EAA guidelines that Mr. Stratton presented to us a while back. And right now in that document, it says 3 consecutive weeks of red of a town to stop sporting events and practices and activities. So
again, super helpful. This is why I want to go through it. I don't want to vote on something I don't understand. The dashboard. Anybody who's followed any of these meetings knows I've been asking for this dashboard since the summer. So I'm totally ecstatic about that. The viewable to all feature for families and making personal decisions is very important. I'm really appreciative of that being in the document. If we were to vote affirmatively today on this, when do the students go back to school?
That is still something that we're considering. Based on conversations I have regularly with the health department, we have seen, and I don't know if you've seen the updated public health website, but as of 2 days ago, I believe we had 41 active cases. We're now up to 55. So over the last couple of days, we've had an increase. I also have some information that, as we look into our positive school community members, kind of what has happened and some of the contact tracing and the number of people that may or may not have to quarantine. We no longer have the automatic 2-week, but as of right now, I really feel like we need to wait a little bit longer to get students back in. I think having this week and next week is probably a very good idea for people who have been on that 14-day quarantine as of last week when the numbers started to rise. And as of right now, and this could change at any moment, but I feel like a target date for us to look at is Monday, November 16th.
Mrs. Hoffman, your explanation right there is why you're the interim superintendent. That is showing that you take all of these factors into such careful consideration. I really appreciate every detail you just shared out. What Carmelo said before about having faith in you, there it was. I think I just want to say to sort of close how I'm going to vote. I'm still kind of thinking it over. I came into this not having all the information, which I really don't like. I like having the information in order to vote. I would have abstained. I'm feeling much better about things right now. I want all the kids in school, but the safety infrastructure needs to be there. And just in your last answer alone, you've again more than given me faith in how you're making the decisions with the team. Thank you for including the school committee and the continuum of who you're communicating with. I think that's also very important as we continue to get a lot of questions from the members of the community. I just want to end by saying thank you to this week has not particularly been kind to a lot of people. As the parents have struggled through things, we've struggled through things. Teachers for sure have struggled through things. And I just want to say, I know it's exhausting and challenging. I appreciate everybody. I'm a parent. I'm totally exhausted too, beyond words. I hope the negativity and the blame and all that stuff goes away and that we just continue to figure this stuff out together. I'm feeling really good about this meeting so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Others?
Yes, hi, it's Carrie. I'm on the line.
Miss O'Connor, go.
Hi, thank you very much. I just wanted to say that I'm very pleased with the information that's been discussed today. Between the agreement with the union as well as administration. And Sheila, I thank you for your response regarding safety coming first and really assessing the situation really day by day. I also wanted to, I'm really happy to see that there is going to be a level of transparency that's been negotiated between a union contract as well as administration. I want our kids back in school. It's important that they get back in school, but we are just at a time right now where safety comes first. And I've heard a lot of good information today. I just would like to keep this level of transparency going within the community, because there are also other parents that have different views. And I think that as we address all these different views together and work together and continue to work together and also include the school committee regarding all of this, I really appreciate the information that I heard today. So I did have a question about the medical professionals. I know that you answered that, Sheila, and I know that Kathy R. was, she is part of this process, and there's a licensed nurse as well. But I know I have been asking about this question really from the beginning. If there is any possibility to be able to incorporate any type of evidence regarding medical professionals to be part of this process and really looking at that, I think that would be a wonderful thing for the union, for our teachers, for our community, as well as input for our community members and our parents. So they also know that we do have other medical professionals that are looking into this, as well as providing any type of consultation. So I just wanted to say that I do appreciate this agreement and how fast things were worked out. And I'm glad that there's actually a contract in place for that level of transparency. And I hope that in the future that we don't have to negotiate a contract for that transparency. So I really appreciate all the hard work everybody has put into this. And we're here for our school community. That's what we're here for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Reed.
So I was a part of the original negotiating committee, and I just want to thank the union for willing to come back to the table or suggesting that we do, because we're all in this together and none of us have ever been through this. So we have to keep tweaking things. And I agree with Mr. Minio. I have the utmost confidence in our nurse to make the determination on what we should do. I think the 48-hour thing is essential because going to remote, as we just did, caused a lot of stress for the parents, but I think most of the stress came from they only had a couple of hours of notice, and that was very stressful. So I like the 48 hours. I think our administration did a great job, and Mayor Sapelli and all the negotiating you did. I appreciate all the hard work. I think our teachers work really hard, as well as our students. They're trying. It's really not working the way it should be. I mean, it's working as good as it can, but it's not really what our kids deserve. So I'm hoping we get back to school as soon as possible. My question to you, Mrs. Hoffman, is we left on a Friday. Are we going, when the kids eventually go back, will they go back on a Friday or are they losing an extra day?
Right now, I would recommend going back on Monday the 16th, given the information that I've gotten from the health department on new cases coming up and the amount of the quarantine period that some people have to be in. I think it would be smoother for the students and the teachers to have more people be able to go back on that Monday, the 16th.
And Mrs. Reed,
Okay,
just,
that's
Mr. Hoffman did consult with Kathy Auer, the health director, and they came up with that decision together.
okay. All right, I'm in agreement with the addendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Doobie?
I'm not going to say much, but I'm going to give you 2 thumbs up from this girl here who is looking forward to the kids getting back to school. So thank you for your hard work. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your comments, your input, your questions, and your concerns.
Can I just say one more thing, if I may?
Go ahead, Mr. Bonavita.
Thank you. You know, it just came to me when Shelley was speaking. You know, for time being, I'm fine with the health director and the head nurse, you know, giving us advice and making determinations. And I know it costs money to get doctors, but, you know, we're talking about people's lives, and I'm not fear mongering like I'm accused of by some people. I don't mean to do that in any way, but if at some point we really need to, and we'll know if depending on how bad things get. You know, January and February, I think, are going to be the months you're going to see be the most difficult because people, because of the weather and everything, are really closed in. I'm not against in the future if we have to, and if we deem it necessary, you know, paying a doctor to get a few hours of consultation that's in that field. And you know, it's not going to cost $1 million.
No.
So even if we had to spend, you know, a few $1,000s at some point to get an opinion, if we felt it was necessary, I'm not saying just for any reason. It has to be, you know, things have to be pretty bad. If we felt we had to do that, then I think, you know, at some point, if we had to, I think it should be considered. Not saying doing it right now. I like this agreement. I think it protects the community. I'm talking about, you know, months from now, and hopefully it doesn't come to that. But
yeah, we don't know what the future brings. I hear what you're saying, and I can't give credit enough where credit is due with Kathy Auer and Mrs. Hoffman. When we had the early childhood situation, they didn't need to call anybody in. They saw it for what it was. They identified the situation, the specifics that went with it, and they shut it down as appropriately so. So I think the commission would probably tell us, you people know more about your area and your specific issues than we do. But if that came to that, Mr. Bonavia, we certainly wouldn't shy away.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly appreciate what Mrs. Hoffman and the health director did, and I do value their opinions. And the health director's opinion as far as medically, but I'm just talking about if we get into an extreme situation, because the pressure is always going to be on, because all of us on the committee, I don't think there's a single person on the committee that doesn't believe that in-school learning is the way to go, that's how students learn the best. There are some people that can do it on a computer, obviously, but if you want to get a well-rounded education, really in person is the way to do it, because you lose a lot of the social aspect, and some people just have a difficulty of learning off of a computer and following the directions you have to follow and whatever.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, and so that's all I wanted to say, and it's very well done. So I'm not going to go on any further about it. You know, I think the health director, the advice she has given us thus far has been very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I will ask Alexis to call the roll. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Alexis.
Mrs. Reed.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Connor.
Yes.
Mrs. Rupa.
Yes.
Mr. Minio.
Yes.
Doobie.
Yes.
Mr. Bonavita.
Yes.
And Mr. Mersapelli.
Yes.
With 7 yes, it's unanimous.
Thank you. You've approved the addendum B. Appreciate the input, the concern. I can't thank the union enough for getting back to the table, being proactive and coming up with 90% of this agreement. They were very proactive with that. They brought it back to their union body, and we had at least 3/4 of them vote in favor of it. I'd also like to thank Attorney Duperret for taking time to be on this call with us. Thank you, Attorney Duperret. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Reed, seconded by Mr. Minio. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now adjourned. Thank you very much.
Aye.
Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, take care.